if you will do the same,
I
we
will.
will do.
Good, sir.
All right. Let's do
It's
some
recording.
claps so I can.
I
sync
really
up
hope
the
this
audio.
works. Okay.
Oh, it will. It will. 100%. Let's not jinx it.
Okay.
3, 2, 1. All right.
Cool. Okay.
I have zero faith in myself that is anywhere near close to accurate, but that doesn't matter because I will figure it out. I am happy as shit to finally be recording so I can have something on the channel with you.
Yeah. It's long overdue.
Yeah. So before we go ahead and talk too much, for anybody who's watching this on YouTube, hello and welcome to the Unix Crew. This is where I bring people onto the channel who are, well, talking about Unix and shit. And I'm very excited for today because, like, there's multiple reasons, but behind the scenes, I'm sure most people who watch the channel don't know this, but me and TFL, I consider us close friends. We get along very well behind the scenes, and it's about damn time that we do something together. Okay? And
Yep.
so today we're going to be talking about i3 versus DWM and kind of talking in, like, since you're an i3 user, like, you know, we'll dive into just talking about, like, why you use i3.
I've used it now and again.
Yeah, now and again. Like, for
Yeah.
what, like 7 years?
Just a couple of months or so.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
a week or so. I don't know. Something like that.
Now,
Yeah, 7 or 8 years.
since this is a call with friends, before we dive into i3, I just want to say you've got a shitload of energy today. I've got a shitload of energy, mainly because
Cool.
I'm drinking energy drinks, but
I kind of wish I'd gone into this with more coffee, but at least I've had some earlier. It's just, I can tell it's starting to wear off a little, but I had a vitamin drink, so I've got shit tons of vitamin and coffee going through my system, so I'm good to go for at least another bit.
trust me when I say you probably don't need that extra coffee, because I pounded in caffeine this morning because I woke up, like, just my sleep schedule's terrible, and, like, I just woke up feeling, even though I had a normal amount of sleep, like, I just felt like shit. I pounded coffee, and then I've been joking with my mom because we we were ordering stuff for some family friends on Amazon, and I saw a, like, super small mini ITX case that would just fit, like, a Pico power supply and, like, my mini ITX motherboard, like nothing else. And I jokingly asked her to order it, and like, my mom is one of those people, like, she doesn't just, like, order something. Like, as a kid, like, I never, like, if we were walking in Dollar General and I, like, or some random, like, convenience store, and I was like, hey mom, can I have that? Like, the answer was always, is it Christmas or your birthday? And, like,
See, that's the right response.
exactly. Like, I was not like a
Don't have a
kid.
spoiled kid who just fucking has everything and anything. Like,
Exactly.
At
So,
least have a
like,
reason.
exactly. So, like, my mom doesn't just, like, order stuff, like, willy-nilly for me.
Yeah.
And so I asked her to order it for me, and she, like, did her typical kind of, like, joking thing of, like, maybe she ordered it, maybe she didn't, but it's hilarious that you even think I ordered it. So I've been bugging her for the past little bit about the mini ITX case, like, just being like, you know, when she talks about something getting delivered, I'm like, oh, is it my mini ITX case? Like,
Oh, for God's sake.
all that stuff. And, like, you know, like, I honestly didn't really think that she ordered it. Like, I knew there was a chance that she did, because occasionally she'll surprise me and be like, you know, just hear something. I
Yeah,
love
probably because
like,
you keep guilt tripping her. It sounds like she got it out of guilt.
Oh, no.
Like she felt obligated because you'd gone on about it so much. Like, she would be a horrible mother if she didn't at that point.
No, it goes both ways. There's plenty of times when I order something online and, like, my mom's like, did you order, like, what I asked for? I'm like, nah.
Okay,
like,
okay.
It goes back and forth. So,
Cool.
Anyway, today, like, a whole bunch of shit got delivered, and my mom had ordered me some swim trunks. And, like, you know, I did the typical thing, oh, is it my mini ITX case? She's like, no, it's just some it's the swimming trunks that I ordered. And I'm like, oh, fuck. Like, I don't care about swimming trunks. I've already got, like, a few pairs, like, another one that's a backup, like, really not that big a deal. Then she gave me this.
That was a great reveal.
Yeah.
You just had your arm there forever, just ready, waiting.
Dude, she showed me this, and I was like, holy
That's
shit.
awesome.
Like, you actually ordered it. Like, and here's the thing. This was, like, I was there when we were, like, I was the one who, like, looked it up on Amazon and found it. Like, the shipping on this thing, like, you can read it. Like, it came straight from China. Like,
I can
straight
tell
from
it,
China.
yeah.
It got here in like a week.
Damn, that's not bad.
Yeah. I'm like, what the hell? Like, we were expecting, like even if I did order it, I was expecting it to not get here till May. Like,
Yeah.
late May. And it's already here. I'm like, oh, yeet. So that's why I'm excited. I've got that to play
Awesome.
with.
Cool.
But,
that
so-
excitement's giving you energy, I bet.
Oh, 100%, because I've been nervous about this motherboard just sitting on my desktop, like, or
Especially with
desk.
dogs around and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a little.
They can knock it over and start chewing on it and everything. Oh my god, that's.
Yep.
Oh,
It's a little worrying.
got to shake that one out. That was horrible. Horrible.
Well, so let's just go ahead and dive into the i3 DWM talk.
Awesome.
So are you coming over and going to use DWM now? Like a good little boy?
No. What a great way to start this. This is like, no. Nah.
Why not? What makes i3 so great?
I guess at this point I can refer to my ridiculous amount of notes. I have so much, it's just absolutely absurd. Okay.
Hold on. Before we continue,
Let's
I do
see.
just want to go ahead and say, for anyone who is going to be on the Linux crew, or excuse me, the Unix crew in the near future, and you're watching this episode, just know, notes aren't required. You don't have to have notes. But if you're a diligent and on top of it person, like TFL,
Like me.
you'll have notes. And they will
And
be
lots of
detailed.
them. Yeah, they will be. Like, clearly mine are way... I put too much detail. I put so much detail in it that I can't just, like, look at them immediately. No, I have to actually read a whole freaking paragraph just to know what I knew I shouldn't have done it, but I couldn't help myself. I was like, well, I could just add a bit more. Okay, so what was your question? I've actually forgotten. What makes i3 so good?
Yeah, why wouldn't you switch from it?
Okay, well, the configuration syntax is super sane. I don't have to worry about compiling it and all that kind of stuff. And I don't have to worry about patching and all that crap. I don't have to worry about compiling it after patching it. I don't have to worry about the order of patching it. Worrying about like one patch conflicting with another and all that stuff. As I say, the syntax is super simple. It's essentially key value, although it does expand a bit more, like with the bar block. But it is essentially key value.
No.
Even despite that, though, the simplicity or the approachable nature of the configuration syntax, it's still quite an extensible sort of program. i3, you can do a lot with it, as I've done writing various tools for it and stuff.
Mm-hmm. That's something no one gives credit. Like, no one gives credence to i3's like extensibility just because it's so simple. Like, I mean, I think i3 is kind of the perfect tiling window manager for a newcomer, just because
Exactly.
the config, like, it's really hard to get like lost in the weeds in the i3 config because you're not dealing with C syntax. You're not dealing you don't have to know programming to understand the i3 config. It's
exactly.
Really,
but you can extend it with programming,
Yeah.
which is really cool.
Exactly.
Like, all you have to do is just load up a script or something. You can use any language. You can even write something in C, I think. Yeah, you could. You could write something in C, compile it, and then have i3 point to that. I mean, that's essentially what you do when you run programs, with exec or exec always from i3.
Yep.
I've done that with Perl, so I've written stuff in Perl that i3 uses, and Bash. Got loads of Bash scripts that i3 uses.
Yeah, but no one talks about that though. Like, which is very
they just focus on I don't know. I think it's just because it's seen as this newbie thing. It's like Ubuntu. People forget. Well, it's just all Linux. I mean, I can slightly going off topic, but with Ubuntu, yes, it's primarily targeting new users to Linux or something, the average user, but it doesn't mean it's not Linux still. You can still do a shit ton with it. Look what I've done to it. You wouldn't even know that my system isn't Ubuntu based. A lot of people mistake it for an Arch based. It's the same with i3, I think. I think people they get so used to saying, oh, for newbies, go for i3, forgetting, hang about, an advanced user like me, if you can say that without sounding pretentious, can use i3 and still be perfectly fucking fine.
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, it is very surprising. Like, a lot of, I mean, I feel like I'm with the majority here. It was intensely surprising to find out that you were running a mix of Ubuntu and i3. Like, when I see your desktop, the last thing I think is, oh,
Definitely.
Ubuntu.
Ain't no
Like,
desktop on it.
like that's my thing. Like, no one really expects you to be like, no one looks at your videos and like what you're doing with your desktop and goes, ah, Ubuntu. Like, that's
I know, right?
that's
Everyone
not.
just thinks it's Arch every fucking time. It's like, oh, which Arch distribution are you running or something?
Yep.
Like they just, it always blows their mind. You could tell like so many people just think that Ubuntu is only for beginners and that all it is basically GNOME. This is why I get so pissed off with the naming of and like them saying like they got rid of the Ubuntu GNOME. It used to be Ubuntu GNOME, and Ubuntu was like the Unity thing and all that. But
Yep.
And what's going on under the hood with Ubuntu's base, that's still good old Linux, you know? You could still
No.
build up on that and make your own distribution, essentially, like people do with Arch.
Well, I mean, if we're gonna be honest, I think the best description of Ubuntu, like, and I know this is gonna piss off a lot of Debian people, but let's just call it like it is. It's improved Debian. That's really what it is. Like,
Yeah, I agree. It does improve on various aspects of Debian, at least. It makes things more accessible. Sudo, for example, is configured to be
yep.
much more sane.
Yeah, and well, and that's the thing too. Like, new to Linux people like Ubuntu. Like, if you're gonna start off on Ubuntu, like, it's a good solid base because most
Yep.
things in Ubuntu are optimized to just make more sense. Like,
Yeah.
no one
And it
really like
addresses, like, as many people as possible kind of thing.
yeah, yeah. Like, not everybody knows how insane sudo is behind the scenes. Like, if you're doing very simple system administration, sudo is a pretty complex like ordeal, and
Yeah.
like you can do a lot more than what most people are going to need on a simple desktop setup with sudo, and Ubuntu takes that and makes it like it takes it and just makes it more sane for the regular desktop user, which is a good thing. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And that's what Ubuntu does with a lot of like their stuff is they try to
I
just
can give you
make
an
things.
example regarding sudo. The main thing that I always refer to is, let's say you do sudo vim and then you open a file, you know, like etc fstab or something. In Debian, that will open it with root vim configuration, which of course, if you're a sane person, you won't have given root some special vim configuration, so it's going to be the defaults. You're fucked if you're like me and you're used to your vim stuff. So
Yep.
you would have to like use the uppercase E flag to have sudo use the the environment variables of the person who called sudo. So you get to keep your configuration despite using sudo. Whereas in Ubuntu, that's the default anyway. So you don't have to worry about using the uppercase E flag. So that's
Which
a good example.
makes a lot of sense. Like,
Exactly,
again,
sane.
yeah, pretty much everything about Ubuntu, like they make things more sane for. Well, I don't know. Like, people want to describe it as newbies, but really, in all honesty, it just makes it more sane for just anyone. Like,
Yeah,
on
I'm
the
not a newbie.
desktop.
It's sane to me. Like, I don't have to worry about that freaking. Because, like, what do you do most of the time when you're using sudo? Most of the time, you want to use your home environment variable. You want to use your use environment variable, and so on, because you want to run something as root, but still use your configurations, for example, with Vim. That's
Yep.
probably what you want to do most of the time.
Yeah, and it's
And,
what
and
makes
Ubuntu
sense.
addresses that.
Yeah, and like that's the thing. Like, I don't know. Like, Ubuntu is just like pretty much i3 has this kind of newbie like it has the opinion of the masses that it's for noobs, but it's
Yep.
really just meant for like making things easy. Like, it's just
Yeah.
it's to get people
While
in.
still extensible. And still,
Well,
and even aside from its extensibility, you know, you can still configure it in more advanced ways. There's actually a lot of configurations there is. Like, if you look at the i3 users guide, which I've gone through several times over the years, like there is a lot you could do. It's kind of cool. No,
Yep.
you can't. I mean, I'm sure you could patch it with various things, but it's not meant, like it seems in the DWM community, you're practically weird if you don't patch it to, Kingdom Come. But you
Yeah.
yeah, it's limited in that sense, I guess. But like, it already has all that functionality. Already has all that configuration syntax. It's kind of those configuration keys, if you like. You can already use those. You don't have to go patching it. And to go back to your earlier question as to what makes it so great, at least compared to DWM, is that I don't have to worry about all that stuff. My life is easier. I can focus on getting things done rather than having to do that. That being said, I do know, you're probably going to say it, but I do know that in DWM you can compile it, get things set up, and then carry on with your life. It's not necessarily that you have to keep doing that all the damn time.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a fallacy somewhere, but life just feels easier when I use i3. It feels simpler.
Well, it's simpler to change your set. Like, I mean, even with DWM, like, I mean, if you're going to do a simple change, like change your font or some bullshit like that, like, yeah, I mean, you literally change a config file and run one
and then
command.
you have to recompile it.
Well, I mean, when you say it like you have to recompile it, like, I mean, if we were compiling Firefox or some bullshit,
yeah,
like,
okay, fair point.
Maybe you'd have an argument there, but it's literally a simple command that if you've ever like compiled any, like, it's a make command. That's literally it.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't sound. I'm not saying it's difficult. It's just tedious. It's something I don't want to have to do. I already compile things enough as it is. Like, I don't want to have to compile that as well, even if it is.
It's an extra step, which is valid. Like, that's a valid argument. Like, it is an extra step. Like, you do have to compile.
And you've got to do that every single time you change a setting.
Yep.
If you're changing, to be fair, I don't change things in i3 a lot, so maybe this is kind of a moot point. But if you are changing things a lot, ouch.
It gets annoying. Yeah, it gets annoying. Like, and especially, like, I mean, if you think about it, when you first get into your tiling window manager, dog, you're changing everything. Like,
yeah, those initial steps probably really painful in DWM, I bet.
Exactly. Yeah, because you the thing is like, i3, I think, is i3 compared to DWM is i3 is where you should and probably will start messing with tiling window managers, because you can change configs really fast. You can mess around, customize it. You don't have to worry about compiling it or errors, like, like because you didn't define something as static when it should have. Like
exactly.
That. Like you don't have to deal with all that. You can just hop in, and there's reading the i3 documentation, it's fine. I mean, it's not. i3's documentation is not like the be-all, end-all. It's not the best documentation in the world,
no,
but it is not by any means bad. It's really...
Wait, the documentation, did you say?
Yeah. i3's
it's phenomenally documented. i3 user's guide is insanely good. Like, it's incredible.
It's really good. It's not the best documentation that you're going to find in the world, but it is bar none good. Like, it would be a really, really hard argument to say that i3 is poorly documented. Like, that is
I'm not going to believe anyone who says that. I'm sorry.
Exactly.
i3 user's guide all the way.
Yeah, it's really good documentation. Now, that being said, with that level of documentation going along with it, and the config being as simple as it is really hard for you to just start configuring shit and break i3 because you didn't do something right. Like, it's really hard. You have to essentially be like just looking at stuff in the i3 config, like the default config, and go, okay, so if that's how it works, I bet I could just try this and then just start typing. Like, yeah, at that point you might have problems, but even then, i3, like, when you break your config with i3, it's not like i3 stops functioning. It'll tell you.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you can still use i3. Yeah, I can balls up the configuration syntax right now, and it'll probably break everything up to... it'll break everything after that. So it won't, I think, if I'm correct, it won't read up... it won't process everything after the point at which it broke. But everything before that, I think, should still be configured correctly. So if you broke something all the way at the end of your configuration, you probably just go about your merry way. And Probably should
Yeah.
fix it, to be fair, but
Oh, well, you should, but
yeah.
I mean, that's kind of my point. Like, it's really hard to dive into i3 and just cripplingly break it. Now, DWM, on the other hand, pretty easy because by default, DWM does not have like a restart function. So for you to retry it, you have to essentially leave DWM. Damn. So if you
that sucks. I didn't know that.
Yeah, you have that's a
in i3 you can, of course it is. See my bloody patches. In i3 you can actually, and natively I might add, restart i3, but you can also tell it to just reload the configuration, which is really cool. So you can not restart i3 in place. Obviously, I don't mean log out and log back in, but in place restart. But you can also just reload the configuration, which I find really useful. If you change like a key binding, just reload the configuration. It doesn't balls anything else up. You just get your configuration loaded and you have access to your key binding.
Yeah. And with DWM, you don't have that. And so, like, mind you, for people who know what they're doing, when you compile and you get errors, or, I mean, warnings are something else with DWM, because, I mean, with most compilers, like, you know, like, let's say I add a patch that has, like, you know, like vanity gaps would be a good example of a patch, like the gaps patch that I used in DWM, because I'm technically
that's not in there by default.
No, it's not.
You don't get gaps by default.
Listen, let me explain something to you. If you don't know DWM, pretty much it's a suckless tool, so by default it comes with like nothing. Like,
does it suck less though? Does it? You gotta keep fucking patching it, dog. Like, that's not very suckless to me.
Okay, see, I used to have the argument. Like, I used to have the argument with people. Like, okay, look, you don't have to patch DWM like nonstop or patch it a lot to have good functionality. I used to use like just 4 or 5 patches, and I used DWM like that for a long time. But when I quit using DWM, which was about like fucking 5 days ago, like maybe a week ago, I had close to 20 patches, like 17 or 18 patches.
Jesus.
An insane amount of patches. And
that must have been really difficult to kind of get the right order and like figure out which ones worked. I assume they can conflict and stuff.
Dog, they can, but the thing about patching is when you use DWM, like I firmly believe when you use DWM long enough, like it's not even DWM anymore. Like you use DWM for like 3 years. Like some of the patches that I was using were like custom manual, like not manual, but like custom patches that people had written like themselves for DWM, and I had to modify like like the code for my DWM was very much like manually entered. Like I configured and rewrote a lot of DWM, which is the kind of funny part about DWM. Like if you use it for long enough, you'll end up patching it to a point where it's probably not even like close to DWM anymore.
Yeah.
And to me, like I don't know, like the patching thing, like when you start adding patches like the gaps patch, you'll get functions in there like for key bindings, like some key binding, like with vanity gaps, you've got a whole bunch of fucking key bindings to change like the gap. Like you can at runtime change the gaps value for like horizontal, vertical, like all that shit. I didn't use those because Jesus, who wants like 10 extra key bindings for changing gaps at runtime? Right? Like who needs? I can set gaps and be fine with it, but because I wasn't using those, like that's like 10 functions that I wasn't using. So every time I compiled, I would get like, when I stopped using DWM, I had about 30 warnings that would spit out every time I compiled, because there was a whole bunch of functionality like through key bindings that I wasn't taking advantage of. And the compiler will give you warnings for unused functions or values.
Kind of screws up the compatibility of your configuration, doesn't it?
Not really, no, but it will scare
unless
the
you have
shit.
those patches.
Well, no. See, like if you like, let's say you pulled down my DWM or like whatever,
Yeah.
like those patches are already included. You don't have to manually patch it; they're already in the code. As soon as I do it once, if you pull down my configuration, you're going to get my patched version of DWM. I have a folder that tells you all the.
Oh,
patches
you
that I have.
upload the binary, your patch, like the patch binary thingy.
Well,
Oh, okay.
even without the patch binary, the patches that you apply change the source code. So if you download the source code and
Yeah.
compile it, those patches are already applied to it. So you don't
Yeah.
have to do
Okay,
it
that
again.
makes sense.
Yeah,
I
but
thought of actually something earlier, by the way, just to go kind of over the fence a bit and join your side, just join the evil side just for a second, the obviously bad side. I use i3 gaps, which is a fork of i3, and in a sense, you can kind of think of that as like a patch. And I'm enjoying i3. I've been using that for ages. So for me to go and say like, oh, you have to patch it, blah blah blah. Yeah, I'm using i3 gaps is just a little bit hypocritical. Just want to acknowledge that.
it's a
'Cause I
little
love
bit
i3
hypocritical. It's a little bit hypocritical, but genuinely, like, not gonna lie, it's not that hypocritical at all, because all it would take is the suckless dudes being like, hey, here's suckless, like, or here's DWM, but with gaps just pre-applied. Like, that's all it would take, and then it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, and the only thing is, it's the suckless dudes, and the suckless dudes doing something that makes sense for the majority of people, and that also is like just good, like altruistic for the community. Like, come on, get the hell out of here. Suckless dudes don't care. Like
They
just
focused on like the minimal bare essentials, don't they?
yes,
And in as few
and
lines codes as possible, I think.
yeah, and they also are the most hilarious group of people ever, because they do genuinely believe that source code is documentation, and just
Oh no.
straight up, just in the most polite way possible.
Okay.
If someone who's watching this believes that source code itself is documentation, just as politely as humanly possible, fuck you. That's not
I'm embarrassed for them.
documentation. That is treating your source code as documentation is straight up the biggest dick move you can ever do, ever.
It's
And
just
if-
laziness. I hate
Yeah.
writing documentation, but I'm not going to get that fucking far. Like, that's just evil.
I'm telling you, man. If at a company, like I genuinely would quit from a company as soon as I found out that that's the work environment. Like, yeah, no, you don't need to comment your code or source, like, like explain and write documentation for anything. Like, what you write is our source code. Doc, I know plenty of people who will put just one letter variable names. Like,
Yeah.
no,
I used to do that.
I know.
I
People
cringe
do
when I
it.
look at my old code because it's so many single little variables. I don't know what's going on.
Exactly. Like, and that, like, the thing is like, we've all done that. We've all done that in code before, where you just.
I think it like comes from like messing around with algebra or something. I don't know. But isn't that encouraged? I'm not a mathematician by any stretch of the imagination, but isn't that encouraged in algebra?
Yes.
X, Y, Z, and stuff.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is there's sometimes where it makes practical sense. Like let's say you're
But
going
you
to
define it beforehand, don't you?
Well,
You say
not,
that Z is equal, like let Z equal something or something like that.
Well, yeah, but the thing is like, so like, let's say it makes sense in your use case to use a one-letter variable name. Like, a perfect example would be a window manager with gaps. You're going to change the X and the Y variable for gaps, for horizontal and vertical.
That makes sense. I'm on board with that, actually.
Exactly. See, that makes sense. But the thing is you need to comment that, or you need to have it in documentation somewhere that explains what the X and Y variable are doing or what they're for, because no matter how sensible it seems to you, somebody who's going to look at that code and doesn't understand that that's what that function is doing, it's changing the horizontal or vertical value for gaps. If someone can't look at your code and instantly know that, then they are lost in the weeds with X and Y. And the thing is from a programmer standpoint, or when you're writing it, you're like, well, anyone who looks at this function is going to know that that's what this is for, because I can look at the function, I wrote it, I know what it's doing. Like, the thing is somebody who's new to your code, you should always operate under the mentality that they have no clue what's going on. Like, they can't understand what you're doing here. If you operate under that mentality, good, that's perfect. Like, you'll never have someone who's
See,
confused.
now I think I differ. I actually think I'm reevaluating my stance. I was agreeing, but now I'm. See, if we're just talking about like, so if you look at my code, any of my code, Perl, Bash, whatever, you will see I don't comment a lot. I comment strictly when I need to comment, when something is relevant. If I'm just commenting to explain what the code is doing, like this is a function for setting this variable +1, so I'm incrementing it, and that's what those operators are doing. Like, I'm not going to do that. Like, it's not my job to teach you how to read Bash or Perl. I mean, obviously with the case of YouTube it's different, but in the actual code, it's not my job to just sit there and fucking explain every single, like, how Bash works, how Perl works. That if you're reading code, I encourage you, I implore you to understand code first.
Well, that's the thing. Are you trying to educate someone on how to use it? Like,
not in the actual code itself for a program or something. No,
exactly.
No.
Okay, perfect. And then someone who's going to use one of your scripts, do they, or like whatever, like programs, whatever, they're going to use it.
Yeah.
Do they like to use the program or use the?
They don't need to
script.
know the code even exists.
Exactly. Suckless, you do.
Oh, right, yeah, of course. So that just changes the argument altogether, doesn't it? Because you have to look at the source code.
Like, and that's the thing. In a company, it's the same way too. Like, if you leave the company, the next guy who's going to come in and sit down needs to know everything about how that code, like everything that code's doing, he has to fully understand it. And if you don't do well at commenting your code and explaining everything, then it's not that he can't do his job, but he's going to have to spend time getting familiar with your code, understanding what's going on, and then he can get on to doing work.
I would hate to work at a company like that then, because I absolutely abhor code that's just constantly commented. You're sifting through more fucking comments than you are code. It's horrendous. It does my head in. It takes out of that peripheral, so I kind of lose a peripheral sense of the code. Yeah,
well, that's the thing. Like, it all depends on your use case. If the goal is to write some code that does something, and it doesn't matter who sees it and like how well they understand it. Like, if you write code that, you know, it's fine code, it does its job, and someone else can look at it and understand it in a reasonable amount of time, then you've done fine. But at a job, like, it all depends on it also depends on your company too, and what your company values. Your company might not care at all. Your company might be like, just get the job done. Like, it's proprietary code. We're not sharing it with anybody. Your job's secure. Like, it doesn't really matter. Like, as long as you're not writing terribly unreadable code, which, by the way, I've met some fucking insane people out there who genuinely write code that is completely ununderstandable by anyone else.
Oh, I believe it. I've seen it many times. I've tried to help people with their terrible code. Frankly, it's
and they write that way.
It's enough to give you a brain aneurysm.
Yeah, and they write that way so that their job's secure, which is hilarious. Because, like, if there's any way to get fired, if there's any way
I was going to say, like, I would fire you pretty quickly if you write the kind of code I've seen. Exactly. Even some of the so-called system scripts, like some of those. Oh my god! I think a long time ago I made a video like looking at some of them, and all I was doing was just basically trash talking because I was so infuriated at one of the cron job script things. Like, it was so fucking bad. Like, the indentation, even like down to the indentation, it was like fucking 10 tabs ahead. Like, it was just like, oh, I don't know. I can't even go there. But that was, oh my god. that hurt me on so many levels.
But, like, that's the thing with well-documented code is, like, if you spend the time to over-document your code, then even though for you it's annoying, for someone who, like, needs to be able to really understand the code to be able to do anything with it, then it makes sense in that use case. And that's why the suckless guys and them, like, thinking that source code is just documentation is the craziest thing to me. Like, source code's documentation if the source code doesn't matter to the end user at all. But if it matters a shitload, then you should probably spend some time on documentation.
Yeah, I agree
and that's
with that.
something that i3 does beautifully. Like, i3 understands that for their end user, documentation and understanding what's going on, that's not necessarily in the code, but in the config file, is extremely important. Like, sure, they could just really well document and add a whole bunch of comments into their i3 config.
Nobody would see it except the developers.
Yeah, well, but see, the thing is that might work fine for most people, but when your target audience, when your end users are people that you're trying to create something for that doesn't require a whole bunch of knowledge beforehand, perfect. You make good documentation. Like that's something that i3 gets really well. Like they have fantastic documentation. DWM has none. Like you can't even find out how to patch DWM. Like if you're completely new, like you know nothing about patching like C code, you know nothing about C itself. Because I'm that person. When I got into DWM, I didn't know a damn thing about C itself. Like, I've known C# for a long time. I've worked in Unity since I was a kid. And so, like, I'm familiar with C#.
Was that
very
just like
well.
2 years ago or something?
Yeah, you know, just 2 years ago. No, I've been working in Unity since...
Young whippersnappers.
Yeah, I don't even remember what computer I was on when I started using Unity. But I can tell you one thing. It definitely couldn't run Unity well. I don't even know that thing could run... Shit, what computer was it? Because it was right after the netbook. I can't remember. But anyway, I started using Unity way back. Like, I've been familiar with C#, but in C, I didn't know how to patch. I didn't know anything.
Because C#'s like a scripting language almost, isn't it?
Yeah,
or even it is a scripting language.
I think it's primarily a scripting language. Like I never got into like.
It's kind of cool.
The funny thing about me and C# is I know a lot about C#, but not in the context of C# itself. In the context of C# in Unity, like I can do a lot with C# in Unity. I've pretty much never used C# out of the context of Unity. So it's not like I'm a wizard with C#. I can just do a lot with the Unity game engine using C#.
Yeah.
But like when you're new to C and patching and all that stuff, like there's no, like you have to go out on the internet and ask other people on how to patch DWM, which is hilarious. Like the suckless guys are like never once were like, you know, we should probably like give guides to people. Like no, because the suckless people don't want, like they genuinely don't want people asking questions, which is...
See, that just pisses me off. Somebody writes programs for so many people. It's a small amount of people in the grand scheme of things, I understand, but I write it with the intention that this could address help loads of people. So I want people's feedback.
Yeah.
I want them to be able to do things easily. Like I give them options. I include features. Not the virus kind of features, by the way, but proper features. Not bug features either, but actual features.
So what you're saying is it's not the Microsoft type features where it's a bug, but it's now a feature.
I don't write Microsoft programs, you know, which include those special features. Anyway, so like that just pisses me off because I care about the user, and I feel like the suckless don't especially care about the user. They
don't.
Like it's more. I don't know.
I'm someone who likes suckless software, and I'll even tell you they don't care about it.
I use DWM, so I guess I do as well. I'm just not overly into like their approach, their mindset.
I think genuinely, like I'm pretty sure I can say on behalf of the community, like in large, just as a whole that uses DWM and suckless tools in general. I don't think many people are fond of the way that suckless interacts.
See, that says a lot. They should probably start reconsidering. And another thing is like the even though I don't even know if this is probably within the topic, but the line count thing, like that bugs me. Because if I just arbitrarily start restricting myself when writing programs to actually limit it to a given set of lines, that's going to encourage some pretty dodgy behaviors. Now I'm going to not include cool features because it might put the line count over some fucking ridiculous arbitrary number. Or I might write code in a really ugly, hard to read, obfuscated kind of way because you know what? It might go over that line count. Like I'm not buying that. I think it's a really silly, arbitrary rule.
And I won't disagree with you there. It is very much. I don't know. Suckless and their arbitrary line count with programs is the most widely debated thing. Like,
I bet.
it's insane because like Suckless's Surf is a good example of the line count just making no fucking sense at all. Like, Surf could be a decent browser, like it really could. And actually, Arch Center or Scott, which everyone who like if you're watching this now, Arch Center is a great guy. Like Scott, his name's actually Tyler. I call him Scott because we just have the same name. I lived with him in Colorado for a bit. Great dude, and he can attest to the fact he's made Surf a good browser. Like, but you have to extensively patch it.
Wait, Surf is suckless.
Oh, excuse me, Suckless's Surf browser, the Surf browser. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I'm so confused. Is Surf a suckless browser?
Yes, it is Suckless's browser.
Okay, so people are patching their browser.
Yes.
Oh. Okay,
No.
so the browser, as I understand it, is one of the most important parts of your system regarding security because it's so close to what you're doing online. And it kind of, you being the user, potentially doing dumb shit, it's a very vulnerable, it's a wide attack surface area, whatever they call it. So to patch that with code in a lower level language, leaving that up to the user, knowing that they could colossally fuck something up, wow, is all I'm going to say there.
Yeah.
Well,
also, remember, Suckless has a 2,000 line code limit for all their tools.
Of course they do.
Yeah. So.
Oh, all of them. Oh, that's not too bad. Well, for low level language, that seems quite low, actually. For me, with higher level languages, that's fine. I could probably deal with that. UberCheck goes a bit over it, but
I want you to spend a second thinking about it. A browser in 2,000 lines of code.
Oh god, yeah, browsers. Oh my god, how do they even manage that? It must be. Is there even support for images? Can it display text?
I think so. Out of the box. I mean, Surf is so slow. Like, Surf is so slow. So slow, dog.
Wow.
If you haven't given Surf the time of day, I dare you to try it. It is the slowest browser you will ever use. It is so slow that it genuinely surprises you. Because
that's got to make you wonder what the point in a bloody 2,000 line limit even is if it's not even going to... Is it for security? Why are they even doing it? Is it security? Is it performance? I mean, performance clearly isn't the case, right, with the Surf browser then. And security, well, you've already made the user fucking patch it, so that goes out the window. Oh, God, it just hurts me. It hurts me deep.
So, I may have run out of space. I didn't really realize we are recording in an extreme level of quality on my computer. So my recording with DT is 100 and close to 150 gigs. So I ran out of space on my little video drive. But yeah. So after a brief intermission where I checked out the Mini ITX and we bullshit around for a minute, let's dive back into talking about i3. So, Mr. Notes, what do you want to talk about?
What do I have in my notes?
Exactly.
Okay, well, let's see. Nodes are bad. And that's that.
Wait,
okay, you know how in i3 you can set modes? So you can, by default, there's a resizing mode. And I've already talked about this in videos as well, I think, but fuck it, while we're here. I really... Modes aren't necessarily really bad. It's just I think that default resize mode is kind of pointless. Like, I don't need an extra binding to get ready to use the binding I actually want in order to resize a window. Just let me resize the window directly. So that's kind of what I meant when I said modes are bad. But in my notes, literally, all I just put is modes are bad, just because I knew what I would. I knew what I was on about.
Yeah.
Another thing is going barless. So I'm barless, not braless. Totally different thing. I'm quite happy to be braless, but I am barless.
Why are you not braless? Come on, man.
it going barless works for me, and I absolutely love it. Unfortunately, I've probably found only one other person who also has gone barless, so we seem to be a rare breed.
I
Um,
right like nobody else wants to go bar. Like to me, I find
yeah.
it insane because what do you typically use your bar for?
Maybe the time, I guess, is probably the main thing. The time and the
That's
time of
it.
the day,
Yeah,
But you can
that's
just, hey, the date command, job done. Like, I mean, if ever, it's not like you need to know the date and time and the second
yeah,
every single second of every single day and have that up
yeah.
there at all times. Just put in the date command. If you are already
Or
in the fucking terminals,
yeah,
then job done.
even if you're not, like just write a little script and just bind it to a
Oh yeah,
keyboard.
a notify send, job done. Yeah,
Yeah, like
exactly.
you get a nice little pop up with the date and time whenever you need it. Like it's
Yeah.
to me like the only reason that I see for having a bar like in this day and age is if you're mad. Like where you have like you want to have like 40 fucking workspaces and you have so many that you can't keep up with them.
Yeah,
Like
yeah. I get it in his case. I do get it. And also, I guess it's kind of handy for laptops because you probably might. Well, I don't know. I don't know about that either because you can just set up notifications.
that's how I have
When
it set
like
up.
I've got a Perl script which I haven't used in a million years. I do have a laptop somewhere, a couple of them actually, and I wrote it for that at the time. But I prefer to just be on the computer instead of going around with laptops all the time. But uh, so I wrote a script for that. It's a Perl one naturally, and it just basically lets me know when the battery is at a certain point, and when it goes below the critical part, way below the critical part, it shuts down, no questions asked. So it's a bit destructive, but oh well, why not?
Well, mine like the way that I set up a script to work, it was super simple. I wrote I've removed it from my GitLab just because I didn't use it, and so like it's been a long time since I used it, so I wasn't sure like whether or not it would work or whatever. But it's just a battery command. Like, and the reason I got rid of it is because I kept switching between OpenBSD and Linux, and I didn't want like the script doesn't work on one system or the other, and so I didn't
Oh
want to
yeah,
like, confuse people. But
yeah.
like it just checked the battery status, like grepped for the line about battery with the proper command, and then if the battery got like to 50%, it would send you a notification like, hey, battery's at 50%. Once it hit
Nice.
25%, it would send you another notification, hey, the battery's at 25%.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
kind of like what the Perl script does.
yeah, and then when it hits like I think I had it set up to like when it hits like 10 or 15%, like every 5 seconds, like it'll rerun the command, do the check, and
Oh
as long as
damn,
it's
that's aggressive.
well, like, every 10 because for me like for the way that I work is like if my battery starts getting low and I just get one message that like, hey, it's at the critical level, like I'll notice it, but I won't immediately do anything about it. So I set it up to where
Oh,
it spams you and lets you know like hey, you're at critical. You're at critical like every 10 seconds. So like
I can't remember how often mine spams you. It maybe does the same sort of thing. I may have thought about that as well.
because and then like of
I
course
hope so.
all of them have a check so that it won't send you a notification if the battery's like if you plug it in, then it
Yeah,
will stop doing anything because it won't.
but back to bars.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of distraction. You've got all these, especially with me back in the day when I did use bars, plural. I'm intentionally using plural. I had two. I had one at the top and one at the bottom, and it looked alright, but it was a lot of numbers. It was a lot of statistics that I did not need to see at all fucking times of the day. So it was distraction. I found myself just sat there when I should have been thinking about what I was doing. Instead, I was looking at these bloody statistics that was doing nothing for me,
Yep.
and I was also wasting time maintaining them, making sure that the code for those statistics worked and stuff. And it was just a pain in the ass. I couldn't be arsed with it in the end. And that's when I went parlous.
No. Well, I mean that's the thing too. Like you don't need them. Like you
Yeah.
just don't. As soon as you stop using them, like you find out, oh, like
And you
kind
get that space. You get that space back. Like in my
yeah.
case, when I had two bars, that was quite a lot of precious screen real estate that I was taking up.
And that's the whole
I mean,
point too
not
with tilers.
tons,
Like
I suppose.
if you're using i3 or DWM, like the whole point is to use up as much of your screen real estate
Exactly.
as possible. And
Yeah.
when you're using gaps as well, like
Yeah,
just for the aesthetic.
I mean, you could say we'll just stop using gaps, dummy, but we like our gaps.
But that's the thing. Like gaps is it's a nice aesthetic touch that doesn't it doesn't take up that much real estate. Like most people are using
Mine
gaps.
do.
Well, your gaps are for prettiness. Like if we're being honest.
Yeah, I have quite high gaps.
Yeah.
They're well thought out regarding font size of terminals, but they are quite
the thing
quite
is
gappy.
like the people who do have bigger gaps, like the reason you have bigger gaps is because you're showing your system off. Like you're showing off the aesthetic of your system.
Yeah.
Like
It's for the visuals.
Exactly. Like for gaps, like most people who run gaps have something like about 8 pixels, like around there. Maybe you have 6 or 4 or like
I think
10.
mine's 20.
Yeah, like again, that's an aggressive amount of pixels. Like not everybody run. Like most people who
I'll
run
actually
gaps,
check. Can't remember.
Yeah, but when you have like a
30. It's 30.
30?
It's worse. Yeah, I didn't.
And you're using
I think
a
it used to be
1080p screen, right?
Yeah, it used to be 40, but I put it down to 30.
Fuck.
But yeah,
That's
it doesn't look it though. You wouldn't think it.
I know, right? Like I've seen your i3 setup does not like you look like you're using 30 pixel gaps.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah. But I mean, besides the point, like with gaps, you're doing it for an aesthetic reason, and if you're going to be using gaps already, like if you don't need a bar, get rid of it. Like
Yeah. And if you're going to use gaps, like that screen real estate is even more precious.
Well, I mean that's my point.
So you might as well just get rid of the bar.
Exactly. Like you're already trying to improve the aesthetic of your system, and like if we're being honest, bars are one of the weak points of aesthetics in tiling window manager. Like I don't know if you would agree with this, but I see.
No, I don't.
Okay, well, bear with me here. Do you not see a lot of people that have some really cool rices going on, but then
with their bars?
Well, but see the bar, like for a lot of people, their bar, like here's a good example. Like someone adds transparency, Gaussian blur, rounded corners, and they've got this really nice like modern like like not necessarily futuristic, but they got a very modern like crisp looking setup.
But the bars look like shit.
Exactly. Well,
or they just don't. They just clash.
Yeah,
they just don't really kind of go well properly.
Like the bar doesn't either. Like either the
sort
bar
of throws off the whole aesthetic.
Yeah, like either the bar is like transparent but no Gaussian blur, or the bar has gaps but like it like the rounding of it doesn't match with the rest of the windows. Like there's plenty of times where I see bars and I'm like, that's not a bad looking bar, but your rice is better than the bar. And vice versa. I've seen plenty of setups where the rice itself for like the like the actual windows and the window manager itself is meh at best.
But the bars look awesome.
Yeah, then the bar's like riced out, looks great. Like I don't understand it. Like just focus on like what you're actually going to be looking at the majority of the time, which is the windows. I mean, at least I fucking hope so. Not your bar.
Yeah.
Like your bar shouldn't be the thing. Like, I mean, if we're being honest, if 90% of what you spend your time at the computer looking at is your bar, what in the fuck are you doing? Like
exactly. Like, yeah, get rid of the bar and just be more productive. I just I can't understand why. I can't think of a situation when you truly need a bar. Like if you need to see your battery thingy, set up a warning system, job done. If you need a time, date command. And this leads me to something else actually, just to get the ball rolling a bit more. The other thing I wanted to talk about was that I think tiling window managers, and I guess I'll just specifically say i3, is best for terminal focused setups. I don't think, and I won't recommend a tiling window manager, but I won't recommend a tiling window manager for people who don't predominantly use terminals, basically. And the reason for that, in at least i3, is because tiling window managers are notorious for not managing GUI windows very well, floating windows. So this is why, and it leads me into something else with my i3 setup, I have a float first paradigm. Everything is float first, and I configure as I go along. So if I open up a new program, and it's a GUI program, if it's Firefox, let's say, I will make it tiling. But any dialogues that it pop-ups or whatever that it pops up will be float, as they should be. this is how I've approached my system. And have you ever used NoScript?
No script. No, I've never even heard of it.
Okay, it's an add-on for Firefox. Basically, you can set it so that it blocks all JavaScript, all things like that. It's really good for security. Strongly recommend it. So it's kind of like that. You have to, when you load up a new website, you've got to go through the domains and add and allow them as needed, which is sure, it's a bit tedious. It gives you something you have to do when you go onto a new website. But if all you are doing is pretty much just going on the same websites, it's fine. And it's the same, in my opinion, with tiny window managers. If you're just sticking with terminals, you don't really have to worry about that thing because you're pretty much just in the same environment anyway, your terminal. And then any programs in that terminal, well, you don't have to worry because it's part of the terminal. So this is why I think that a float first paradigm is really good, despite it being a tiny window manager. Don't get me wrong, you still tile things. Obviously, that's the point of a tiny window manager. But also that a tiny window manager is much better for people who predominantly use terminals.
I would agree with that. Like that's a pretty hard argument to argue with. Like if you're using Windows or terminals primarily, like yeah, it's probably better to go with a tiling window manager, just in general. Especially if you're the type of person that uses terminals like with tmux, because let's be honest, if you set up your tiling window manager like you care about screen real estate, like it's super easy to set up either i3 or DWM to just not use up pretty much any of your screen real estate and just open Windows up full screen. And if you do that with tiling, like especially with tmux, like one workspace, you just have one terminal. And you
I've never thought about that, having like a full screen only sort of thing.
Setup. Yeah, like
that'd be interesting.
You could easily set it up to where like opening up one terminal in each workspace is one key binding, and then if you're using tmux, you can have multiple terminals running inside of one. And
it's a multiplexer, right?
Yeah, multiplexer. Yeah, so you essentially wouldn't have to like that kind of workflow is how I feel a lot of people that use tiling window managers, like why they do it, because they're tmux users. And
okay, but conversely, why would you do that? You're already in a tiny window manager. Like you could just open up new terminals.
That's the reason I don't use tmux. I don't see a reason for it. Like
great for a TTY, but I'm not sat in a TTY that often. And even if I do use SSH, which I do, one of the servers I help maintain, I use that via SSH, but I don't really need tmuxing for that. And again, I'm in a tiny window manager, so I can just SSH in through different terminals. Bit more tedious, but I can do it. And you probably have to do that in a multiplexer anyway, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
In each like window within the multiplexing environment or whatever, you probably have to SSH in separately.
Yeah.
I'm just guessing. I've never used a multiplexer.
Same here. I haven't used it, so I don't know, but I believe so. I believe that's how it would work. But yeah, man, it's just it's interesting that a lot of like, I mean, if you think about it too, like if you're very GUI driven, like there's just things about tiling window managers that don't necessarily make sense unless you're going to set them up yourself. Like, I mean, a good example is like GIMP. Like GIMP is one of those ones where
so many good dialogues and pop-ups. Like, you don't want them to be tiled. Again, this is why I do the float first paradigm. I hope people see this and be like, oh, maybe I'll try it, because it'll probably change their lives as far as tiling window managers goes. Having float first, it's such a...
With most tiling window managers, they have defaults set up, so like the pop-out windows are not tiled immediately, which is
but that's good. Not very accurate. That's the thing.
Yeah, well,
a lot of developers with their GUIs, they don't properly give things like that role. They don't give a role. They don't give a proper. Some programs don't even have a fucking title. It makes it really difficult to have a role for them. Which again, this is why I say go float first. It will change your life. If we're being melodramatic. My life changed that day. When I went float first, I weren't the same man I were yesterday.
Oh my god, I love it.
I'm glad that's in the video.
So, is there anything else in your notes that you want to take care that you want?
Oh hell yeah, there's loads. Are we running out of time?
Well, I just want to be
run through them
safe
pretty
so that
quickly.
we don't have another crash in the video like the
Oh,
video.
okay. Yeah, I'm concerned about that too. Okay, so compiling and building Debian packages for i3 gaps is something I do. You can do that in Ubuntu. So the thing is with i3 gaps, it's not in the repositories by default. As far as I know, that's even the case in the newer Ubuntus, at least 2004, the latest LTS, I think that one is. Or is 2104 released? I don't know, whatever. But in most Ubuntu distributions, let's say, it's not in repositories. So I've compiled it myself. It's very easy to do. It is a nuisance because you have to go and get the dependencies, but just try it out. If you're watching this video, just try it out. It is worth trying. And building Debian packages makes life a lot easier too.
You have to compile i3 gaps?
Yeah, because again, it's not in my repositories. And keep in mind, I don't have the AUR because it's Ubuntu land.
So the whole compiling argument against DWM is like...
I know, right?
null and void.
But that's only in my specific case. There's probably a bit more of, that word, I've forgotten it. But yeah. So the other thing is, can I plug?
Can you plug?
Yeah, like, can I put, I think they refer to it as a plug. Can I, okay, I'll just do it. I'm sure you'll be fine with it. So I have 3 i3 programs which I've wrote, which I strongly recommend that you try out if you're an i3 user. They're on my GitHub. TerminalForLife is the same name on GitHub, so go check that. If you're super lazy and don't know how to search on GitHub, then there's links in my videos, just the descriptions. Anyway, so CSI3 is a cheat sheet for i3. I recommend checking it out. It passes your configuration file, and you can specify your own if you have it like me. You have like the bindings in a separate file, but it passes your configuration file with some limitations, and it will spit out a very pretty table of your, it's a cheat sheet for i3 basically. i3 Active is another one. And by the way, CSI3 is in the extra repository. It's a bash written program. i3 Active, and the next one I'm going to talk about, i3 Workspaces, is a Perl written program, or are Perl written programs. i3 Active gets stuff from your active window. It could be useful when you're scripting. i3 Workspaces, same idea, but for workspaces. Done. that was a mouthful.
Well, that's.
I definitely need to refine that.
Well, I've been on your GitHub. I keep wanting to say GitLab, but you're not on GitLab yet.
Hell no. I probably should try GitLab, to be fair.
No, you'll come over eventually.
With Microsoft being in the driver's seat, it's a little disconcerting.
Yeah.
I try not to think about it.
Well, I think that's pretty much how everyone on GitHub is acting right now.
Just pretend the overlords don't exist.
Exactly. Just don't think about it. Like it's fine.
Yeah.
You're serving Satan, but it's okay.
Yeah, I know, right? Okay, so another one is indicators. Were you going to say something there?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so indicators, just in case anyone cares, I found indicators really annoying in i3, so I disabled them. It's actually a cool little trick. I didn't really disable them. I just made the color of the indicators the same as the window borders, effectively disabling them. So if anyone has been using i3 for a while, and this is what I say, like, it's great for advanced users as well, because obviously that's 7 or 8 years in i3, I know what the fuck I'm doing, so I don't need indicators telling me, So, you can effectively hide them by making it the same color as the border. Just keep in mind, you've got to do that with the inactive border as well. So make it the same color. The indicator is the same color as your inactive borders. The other thing is i3 is great for development. So if you're doing any kind of programming, i3 is great because of the fact that it's predominantly, or it's great for people who predominantly use terminals, and the fact that it's efficient and it's keyboard driven and it's tiling, again, adding to the overall efficiency. It's just great for programming. Do it. I mean, if you're a programmer and you stick in terminals, do it.
Yeah. Well, i3 and DWM kind of target the same market, but I'm actually on i3's website.
Yeah, exactly.
Here, and they even state in the first paragraph on their website, i3 is primarily targeted at advanced users and developers.
Okay, that explains a lot, because I'm super advanced.
Oh yeah.
You know what? It's really difficult not to sound pretentious when you actually know something. It's so difficult. I feel like I have to constantly constantly beat myself up, kind of like, I'm just so terrible at Linux. Don't know what I'm doing, but I'm an advanced user, even though I'm shit.
Hey, let's poke the online trolls. All right, TFL is the leader of the Linux Crew.
Oh no!
Self-proclaimed leader. Oh my god!
Oh. What are you doing? Okay, recording that again. I'm just kidding.
We cut that out. We cut that out.
Cut. Okay. So wait, what was the other thing? I'm intrigued by Sway WM. So I know some people might mention Sway, like i3 is great, but what about Sway? So Sway WM, Sway Window Manager, it's basically i3 as I understand it, but for Wayland, because i3 is X only. So that's something really important people should know. Isn't that the case with DWM, by the way? It's X only.
Yes. Well, Wayland is weird. Like, as far as I know, like tiling window managers in general, like have to be specifically made for it. And so, genuinely and honestly, if you're someone who like likes tiling window managers or just different window managers, like than something like a desktop environment like KDE or GNOME, don't fucking use Wayland. Just don't, unless you really like Sway. Like, if you really like Sway, then go for it. But
yeah, if you like Wayland, maybe just give Sway a go. I've never used it personally. I don't know too much about it, other than it's kind of like A3, i3 even. Apparently, it was kind of rewritten for for Wayland.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, pretty much everything has to be, because what a lot of people don't know is like X like has it detects keyboard input. Like, it has a keyboard input detection system.
Yeah, it's for your display, it's for your input, your mouse input, keyboard input,
Wayland
fucking just about everything, really.
See, here's the thing that cracks me up about people like with Wayland. Okay, if you really like Wayland, you're running X in the background. Like, you have to. Wayland has no keyboard detection. Wayland cannot detect keyboard input. It's retarded.
What?
Wayland does.
Oh my god, I did not know that.
Exactly. So here's the thing. Do you know how Wayland gets keyboard input?
From X, I'm guessing.
Yep. When you're running Wayland,
I hope they address that in the future versions. I'm sure they will. But.
Oh, they will. But see, this is the thing about people who want to make the argument about like how Wayland's the best, and it's ready. Like, you should just use Wayland because it's better. Like, dog.
It's only ready because it's basically on the back of X.
You are having to run X for Wayland to work now. Like, I know one day that probably won't be the case, and Wayland will be better.
Yeah.
Like, if we're honest.
I'm sure.
Yeah, Wayland is better for security. Like, it's just going to be better. But at the current moment, you have to run X to get functionality. So
you might as well just use X, and unless you're going to really get something, it works for you, and you're going to get something out of Wayland. I would say. Unless
Wayland, like if Wayland fixes a pervasive issue that you have with X that you just cannot deal with, then obviously use Wayland. But if you're using Wayland just because it's new, it's better, it's whatever, like, and you can't point to one specific thing and be like, that fixes this issue for me on Wayland, like, don't fucking use it. Like, you're using X. Like, yes, it's not full X. You're not running a full X server in the background, but you're running a minimal X server on top, like, underneath Wayland. So, like, if Wayland doesn't,
that makes me wonder, like, how much more secure is it if you're still using that same X stuff? Like,
well,
I don't know. It just seems a bit strange.
As soon as Wayland does do what the minimal X server in the background is doing, it will, because, like, here's the thing. People don't understand this about Wayland. This might also blow your mind. Did you know that Wayland is kind of like a standard? It's not like, so let's say you're running KDE or GNOME. If you're running KDE on top of Wayland, you're running a completely different Wayland than you're running on GNOME.
What?
They are completely different.
How?
The implementation of Wayland is completely different on both, because Wayland is kind of like a standard. It's not like, a good example would be like OpenBSD's build of Xorg is completely different, or X is completely different than Linux's because of Zenakara. Like, the build method for X is completely different. Like, it's still X, but it's different than X is on Wayland.
But couldn't KDE just choose to use like the standard Wayland or something, like the same Wayland that GNOME uses or something?
Well,
Does it have to be something different, or is it just that it can be? It's flexible like that.
It's not that it can be. Well, it's not that it has to be like different, but it's that because Wayland, the good example is the keyboard input. Like getting the keyboard input from the user, like the method in which you go about interacting with the X server can be different. GNOME, the way it interfaces with X is different than KDE. And because Wayland is not a complete like solution, it's again more of a standard, then you have like the way in which a developer can go about doing things can be different. Like you're still using Wayland, but the implementation of Wayland is completely different than
That just sounds like it makes things more confusing, more convoluted, especially for the developer.
Exactly.
Ah.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the more you dive into Wayland, the more interesting and nuanced it gets. To me, I don't think Wayland is going to be something that takes off like as much as people think it's taking off right now.
Are you sure? I think it's going to do really well, just like Snaps.
Oh no, it's going to do extremely well. It's going to do extremely well, and it's going to be
Eventually.
massively adopted eventually. Like the push for it right now, like the perfect example of this is if you're using pure Wayland, like there is no X server in the background, 90% of your Steam games won't work. And also, on using Wayland, the Steam games that do work, the only reason they work and they get input correctly is because of the minimal X server in the background. Because those games, the way they receive input is through X. So you would essentially have to rewrite, like, or not necessarily rewrite, but you would have to change the way Proton works so that it can work with Wayland. Like, that's the problem with Wayland.
Well, if anyone can do it, Valve can do it.
Well, and that's the thing. They've got
the resources.
Like, these corporations will want to use Wayland mainly because it is more secure than X. Like, it just is. The way it functions is more secure than X. So, big corporations want to use it because, well, if Wayland becomes the standard and they move over to it, you're less likely to have bugs creep up because when you focus on security, like, and this is why I like OpenBSD, when you focus on security over anything else, your program or what you're writing has to be more simple by nature. Because the more complex you make something just for the sake of features or complexity's sake, the more attack vectors there are. So the likelihood for bugs to creep up in more simple software is much more difficult. But when you're focusing on security and not necessarily simplicity, but if you're focusing on security, simplicity is a byproduct. Simplicity is not really cohesive to making something as complex as X. Like, X is not, like, I don't think anyone that, like, dives into X is like, oh, this is simple. Like, I don't think anyone does.
Have you ever looked at, I can't imagine you have, but the X11 protocol for Perl is fucking dizzying. It's so poorly documented as well. Like, I don't think anyone actually knows of any proper documentation for X7 protocol. That's why I can't write anything. Like, I want to mess around with X7 protocol. The only thing I've been able to do with it is to get the resolution, the screen resolution. I can do that, which is cool. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, it's so dizzying. Like, just creating a window, you've got to do so much shit. Oh my lord.
Yeah, I'm not interested in
To think that somebody once used Perl to create a window manager, damn. Like, yeah, I've seen it. It's something that one neckbeard probably did. But it's quite impressive that somebody did that. And they probably had to use X7 protocol.
Mm-hmm. No.
And by the way, I'm not ready for Wayland. I love all of the X tools too much. Xprop, XWinInfo, Xinput, Xset, Xrandom, Xclip, and the X libraries like the X7 protocol one for Perl. Yep. I like them too much. I need them. I'm too used to them. They're muscle memory. It's too fucking convenient to just use what I know. Yeah. And then there's Simple Screen Recorder, which doesn't work in Wayland. It doesn't support Wayland. And probably OBS issues with Wayland as well. Is that a thing?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, it's just not practical for me.
Yeah. And the thing is like, I felt really bad. Like, so, I mean, I'm not going to call anybody out here, but I had a comment from somebody who made it really funny.
Yeah, DT.
Oh no, it wasn't DT.
No, play along. You know who you are, DT.
DT's comments are always like this. Like, I mean, you could be using Emacs, right? Or not really Emacs. It's always org mode. It's like, well, you could be doing this in org mode. Like, that's DT. But I had someone comment, and they, funny enough, said that like they were like subscribing with the expectation that I would make content like just for what they asked me of, and I'm like, dog, I'm sorry.
Oh like, yeah, like you're their gopher, or yeah.
Well, or like threatening to unsubscribe because I don't make a video that you want to see. God. It's like, okay, like what is this, like a hold up? Like what?
Yeah.
But anyway, he asked for me to check out.
They should make a good like a sketch of that. It'd be really funny. Yeah. Just like have this YouTuber is just like sweating, is just like panicking and going like getting therapy and stuff because of the sheer terror of it, and they wake up with night terrors, all because there's one guy of all of like however many subscribers they have. This one guy is just desperately needing this one video and is like holding him hostage or whatever for that. That would be such a good sketch.
Come on, man, please.
I've got to see it. Yeah.
But he asked me to check out. So he wanted me to check out NEWM, which I checked it out. I thought it was a window manager, and he talked about it like it was a window manager. But I looked it up. It's a Wayland compositor.
I thought Wayland kind of already was a compositor.
Well,
sort of kind of composites built in or something. That's why I don't know. It seemed like that's the case.
Yeah, I think what it is, like it's kind of a like reading up on it. It seems like a mixture between a compositor and a window manager. Like it handles where windows are shown. Like it has this really cool effect where you can like zoom out and see all your windows at like that are loaded up, and then click on them and then like zooming them up into full screen.
Oh yeah, like GNOME I think does something like that.
Yeah. And like I checked it out, and I'm like, well, for one, there's no Wayland on OpenBSD. Like there's none. And also,
I didn't know that.
as for video, well, even if there is Wayland here, I'm sure as shit it functions terribly. Like it, yeah. I'm sure it does because already Wayland.
Maybe they'll adopt it in the future. I mean, if Wayland's like focusing on security, it makes sense for OpenBSD to take that up. Right.
You would think so, but
apparently not.
Again, on
too
OpenBSD,
big.
we have we have it's too big. We have Zenakara, which is it's like a build platform for X, and like the X of OpenBSD is way more secure than X is on Linux. So the whole like security argument on OpenBSD is like for Wayland is like mute. Like
yeah, I got you.
We don't need it. But he also wanted me to check out like he wanted to use like Alpine Linux, and he had tried it on Fedora and Pop OS, and then tried it on Alpine, no luck. And he wanted me to try it out there, and I'm like, dog, for one, I have no interest in Alpine, and everyone that has ever tried to get me into Alpine Linux, it's terrible. Like it's not that Alpine Linux is terrible. It's just like no one uses it. The documentation is lackluster. It doesn't intrigue me. It's kind of like Slackware. Like there's like 10 people out there that will rave about Slackware and tell you it's the absolute best thing in the world. Dog, they barely pay the domain fees. Like their site will go down for weeks at a time. Like they're just it's at best. So I'm not moving over to Alpine Linux, and then also I can't use Wayland. Like even if I was to go over to Linux and try to
OBS and stuff.
Check this out. Yeah, I can't use Wayland. Like I just can't.
Wait, don't you stream with FFmpeg, or did you stop doing that because it was unstable or something?
I stream with FFmpeg.
So why it wouldn't really matter about the OBS thing though for you, right? Or do you still occasionally use OBS?
Well, but see, here's the thing. To capture your screen using FFmpeg, you're using X11 Grab. Like, that's what I'm using. So I would
that's right, yeah.
To use something from Wayland. And the funny thing about doing that is when you try to capture a screen on Wayland, there is a pop-up that you have, like you'll get a pop-up where you have to choose the display that you want to capture, and then it'll work. It's like a kind of a security feature.
That's actually sounds really cool.
Yeah, the thing though is in my experience, there is a, like on pretty much everything other than GNOME, it's iffy as to whether you're going to get that pop-up at all. And if you don't get that pop-up, you can't select the screen that you're going to capture from, so you can't capture shit. Like Wayland is just one of those things where it's not ready yet, and I know one day it will be, but when it comes to like Sway, as far as I know, Sway isn't Sway just i3. Like that's what I
apparently.
Yeah.
I mean, it's essentially i3 just with all the Wayland stuff. Like the configuration syntax is updated. You can configure like the resolution and DPI probably and all that kind of stuff within the actual configuration, which is actually kind of cool.
Yeah, it's cool, but then also at the same time, like I don't know, it might be like the thing about Wayland is like, and like let's say you can control your displays and stuff through your i3 config, like that's cool. But when you lose a lot of the ability to do stuff, like, why?
Oh, you mean like Xwin info, Xinput, accept, blah blah blah.
Well, I mean, like there's tools with X that you just don't have access. Like there's not a replacement for with Wayland. Like as far as I know, Xprop. Like is there like
nothing like that? I've never heard of anything like that in Wayland.
Exactly. Like I don't even know.
I need those tools. They are so important, especially when you're configuring something like i3. You need to know what
you need.
Oh my Lord.
And it's just like there's no replacement for it, or if there is, who the hell's talking about it? I haven't heard a single person. And
you can get some of that info. You can get some of that information with Xwin info, but guess what? Same fucking problem. It's X.
Yeah. I don't know.
So the other thing that I want to talk about, and this is probably the last. Oh, actually, yeah, the thing that I have in my notes regarding i3 is as good as it does have its issues. So some of the flaws I've noticed from using i3 for years is that I can't spawn windows above or to the left of a window. So you know how like you create windows in. You've used i3 before, right?
Yeah.
So you've got the little indicator, and you can make it like to the right of a window or the bottom of the window, and that's it. But you can't make it the left or the top. So essentially, you can't open a window immediately above or to the left of a window, which is such a weird thing. I don't know why the developers of i3 totally blanked out on that. It's so bizarre. You could script it. Absolutely, 100%. Honest to God, you can only make it go from the right of a window and the bottom of a window. I know it sounds god awful, and it's probably enough to put every single i3 user or would be i3 user off, but it's fine. Calm yourself. It's fine. But it is weird. It's weird that the developers overlook that, and you can script for it. So you could totally do that and stuff like that. But to have that feature natively would be incredible. Another thing is micromanaging GUI windows.
Hold on. I can't believe that because I used to
use your brain.
i3 and
did it never click? Hang on, I'm only ever opening windows to the right or the bottom.
Yeah, I don't think it did. Like I don't think it ever clicked. Like
I guess it's because you're already on the left.
Yeah.
So naturally you would already go to the right or the bottom. You wouldn't really work in reverse. It's not like you have a window on the But I don't know. Like sometimes you're on the right and you want to spawn, like let's say you've got two terminals, and you're on the left. You're on the right, and you want to create a terminal on the left.
Yeah, like
that's maybe not normal. Like you maybe don't typically need to do that. So maybe that's why they overlooked it. So you would have to actually create one below you or something, and then go to that, and then move it over to the left, which is kind of tedious. Oh, man, so if i3 devs are listening to this, I kind of hope they add that feature in, because that would be cool. It would make the bindings a bit more complicated, though. Maybe that's why. Maybe they did that specifically to be simple, so that it would be easier.
Well, and it may also be a thing like in their testing and like, back in the day, like with the public, like just getting feedback from people. Like no one ever really talked about it. so they never
Yeah.
saw a reason to add it.
Because you can make do. I mean, all you have to do is just move the window over.
No,
It's a bit of a pain, but
it's not even making.
Huge deal.
I never noticed it. I never
Exactly.
noticed it.
I don't even think I noticed it until maybe. I think actually the time it really clicked and I realized how weird it is when I tried BSPWM a little while ago, and that was like still after many years of using i3. And BSPWM, it lets you create a window anywhere, and which is kind of cool. But that's when I realized, holy shit, i3 is really strange.
See, this is why I love talking to you, because I learn so much every day. I haven't been like checking. I've been hearing a lot about BSPWM here recently, but I still have never checked it out. It's a manual tiler.
You should. If I remember correctly, it's both.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of cool because you've got the manual sort of i3 type stuff, except it's like better in that sense because you can make it to the left or up, basically all directions of the active window. But it also, if I remember correctly, and I really hope I'm not wrong here, but if I remember correctly, it does have some automated tiling functionalities. I think there's like, what's it referred to as, like a binary tree or something? I can't remember what the phrasing is, but
I think that like it's technically like a window tree, like for
layman,
but
it's got something like that. So there are various modes, like, which is kind of cool. I was more interested in manual stuff because that's my preference, and that's one of the reasons, by the way, why I don't use DWM, because I can't ever use DWM because I need that manual tiling. I've spent 7 or 8 years manual tiling. I need that. It's muscle memory, and it works so well for me. Yeah, because you're used to the auto tiling, aren't you?
Well, it's not even that I'm used to auto tiling. Like, that's why I left i3. Is because of the manual aspect of it.
That's like that's weird. That is weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's common as well. Like, most people seem to prefer the auto tiling. I fucking hate it. I don't get how people can not, like, how they can have auto tiling it. So just let me put the window where I damn well please. Thanks.
Well, I think here's kind of, well, let's take it back to the manual, like, tiling and not being able to, like, put a window above. It might be the thing of I'm sure there's quite a few people out there that would make the argument that, well, like, instead of having to manually choose where a window's going to spawn and then move it into the place that I want anyway, like, let me just automatically place it. Like, I don't have to worry about manually selecting where the window's going to go. I know where it's going to go all the time, and then move it to the proper spot if I don't want it where it ends up.
So, yeah, I guess I can kind of see that. So but yeah, I don't know about that one either.
Well, I mean, that's a very debatable. Like, I don't think either one of us can argue that point because, like, I mean, that's not why I use manual tile. Like, that's not my argument.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that someone could make that case for that.
By the way, there is an auto tiler for i3. It's a program that someone wrote. I think it's in Python or something, but it's auto tiling for i3, which is kind of awesome. I've never tried it, but it's something that Mattman's had a look at. So I hear that's a thing. I can't remember what the name is. I'm sure if you put i3 auto tiler Python or something, it'll probably come up.
No.
But it's really cool.
I am very, very, very excited to take a look at BSPWM because I think I'm going to do that here.
i3 is what you want.
The thing is, like, man, for me to check out i3, like, I'm already so, like, looking at the website, like, it's so nostalgic because, like, the website hasn't, like, their picture for i3 hasn't changed since the day that I used it. Like, it's still it's still two.
Oh, same actually. Yeah. Now that I think about it, yeah.
Yeah. It with I believe that's Dexter, like, loaded up, like, just playing. I know the actress plays in Dexter. I don't know if it's from a different show, but, like, it's the same.
Oh, the program. I got you.
Yeah.
I was like the cartoon. I was trying to figure how does that go?
Wait, cartoon. I'm on the main i3 website, and there's a picture of someone using it with let's see, I can't remember that actress's name, but
by the way, it's i3 tiny window managers in general. Really, I find them really good for video. Because
really good for video.
You can so neatly size your video windows. Like, I don't know, it's great. One thing I love doing is having Netflix, or, well, let's just say a regular video on the top right. What I used to do back in the day when I was fresh learning Bash and stuff is I would have loads of Bash videos on the top right, and that was just M player, so it was super sleek and tidy and neat and just it's lovely. And then below that, I would have a terminal where I would just diddle around and whatnot, and then on the left, I'd have the actual code, and that just worked so fucking well. And I don't know, the neat and tidy, like the aspect of i3 and tiny window managers, just really makes my OCD happy. I can't mention tiling and not go on about OCD because, like, seriously, if you have OCD and you're kind of weird about like like I think it's referred to as organizational OCD. If you have that, i3 is for you.
Oh, dude, it really tiling window managers in general. Like, if you're someone who does just like your OCD can go crazy, like tiling window managers are the best because there's nothing that makes you feel more organized than a tiling window manager. Like, it just
I know, right?
It's one of those things where not even doing something specific in it can still make you like the way your system works in a tiling window manager. You go, at least it's neat and orderly. Like that's the feeling you get.
You can write the shittiest code whatsoever and just do everything so atrociously and just watch anime on there and have like cat memes and stuff. But if it's tidy, you might not go to hell. Because at least it's tidy. When you go to bed at night and you're crying yourself to sleep, you can go, well, at least it was tidy and organized. Okay. Another thing is micromanaging GUI windows in i3 is bad, just as going back to like the downsides of i3 that I've discovered. And that's granted mainly, it's actually not main. I was going to say it's mainly because I have a float first paradigm. But even if I didn't do that, it would still be a pain because of those GUI things. So that I'd say is a downside. I've kind of already mentioned the other part of my notes regarding that float first paradigm. Another thing is I sometimes get visual distortions when creating or deleting windows. By deleting, I mean closing. I've seen other people have this as well, so I think it's quite a common issue, and it doesn't seem to matter whether you're using Compton or PyCon, because I knew you were going to... I even put that in my notes. I knew you were going to say something about it's probably because you're using Compton, duh. But I don't think it matters, because I see even PyCon users having the same problem. Maybe not as bad, but it still seems to be a thing.
I can tell you that's visual artifacts when closing windows and
stuff. It's tiling in general?
It's tiling in I think...
Why?
I think
that's so weird.
Well, I think it has something to do with X. Like, because when you...
Limitations of X.
Well, it's really... to me, it kind of feels like... I think like most desktop environments either have animations, like when you close a window, that kind of distract from any visual artifacts you might have. Or it's just the fact.
But even without Compton or PyCon, like if you turn it off completely, you'll still find you get those weird artifacts.
Yeah, and I think it has to do with the speed of a tiling window manager compared to a DE. Like when you close a window on a GUI based DE, I think there's something about the complexity of it that doesn't allow it to just
kind of hides hides something.
Well,
maybe those artifacts were always there, but you didn't see them because of the fanciness of a traditional.
Because the window didn't close so fast. Because like on a tiling window manager, I mean you're not running a whole bunch of shit with a tiling window manager. You're just not. So like windows, when you close them, can close practically instantly, and because it's practically it's not actually instantly, but it seems practically instantly. That's where you'll notice those visual artifacts because it's instant. And if there's anything in that instant that doesn't look right, you notice it. Whereas if it's not an instant thing, a window closing, if the animation's a little screwy or looks a little weird, or the window closing in a GUI is a little weird, it doesn't stand out as much. Because when something happens instant and you can tell it in that brief instant, I feel like it stands out more. Because
that makes a lot of sense. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, like I've never noticed the visual artifacting in desktop environments, but
same.
I notice it in tilers. Like I notice it there, but I think it just has to do with that speed. It's the snappiness of it, and X is. Just,
you know what? I don't think I've seen it with anything other than terminals. Now that I think about it, maybe it's specific to terminals somehow.
That could be it. Or wait, what terminal do you typically use?
Alacrity. But even when I used XFC for terminal for the years and years and years I used it, I still had the same kind of problem. Although I will say Alacrity's given me more problems with that. Like sometimes it will just flash up a bunch of random ASCII characters, which is really irritating.
That's
You'll see that in my stream. It actually happened in the stream that I did earlier.
huh. Weird. Now,
So I think it was close. I was like repeatedly opening and closing Alacrity because I was being like, "Hey, this is opening and closing quite slowly," and then it just went weird and showed a bunch of random ASCII characters, which probably people pause framed it to try to see if like all the secrets of all my bash secrets that I've yet to reveal are like hidden in there. But sadly not, just a bunch of random ASCII characters.
Well,
sorry to disappoint.
I am not sure about what would be causing that, because I mean, Alacrity, as far as I know, like if it happens in other terminal emulators, then I genuinely don't know. Because I mean,
and it's not even like it's an old. It's not like it's an old version of Alacrity or anything. You can't say that because I compiled it. It's the very latest. So unless it's a bug that was introduced very, very recently, since I did compile the very latest one, does Arch hold back a bit?
You compiled the very latest Alacrity build?
Yes, sir. I did.
I'm impressed.
And it's pretty cool. Maybe that's why I'm getting problems. I know maybe I should get an older version.
maybe, but then also, as far as I know, the latest builds of Alacrity are not, like, Alacrity is not really doing stuff where bugs are introduced. Like I never really hear people.
It's no Wayland.
Yeah. Yeah, it's no Wayland.
So one more thing, the last thing I have in my notes for i3, which I probably said was the last thing before, but this truly is the last thing. I kind of already mentioned it. It's any event : i3, and that is basically the name of the Perl module I used for i3 active and i3 workspaces. So basically, if anyone here, I know there's probably just that one neckbeard guy, but if you happen to be a Perl programmer like myself, then you might want to check out any event i3 if you're an i3 user. It allows you to do essentially what the i3 message tool does, and if you don't know what that does, look into it. It's amazing, but it's kind of talking. I think of it as talking directly to i3. It's really cool. So any event : i3. And it's in the repositories, by the way, for Ubuntu. Even my ancient Ubuntu 18.04 base is in my repositories, so it'll probably be in yours.
Yeah, I do like the fact that this has kind of just been like a sales pitch for i3, and like
I know, right?
I have not been.
I didn't intend it.
Well, no. The thing is like I haven't done shit to like defend or like hype up DWM.
You've done a bit. Not really to hype it up, but you've done some defending.
I mean, it's mainly just the thing is like with DWM, like if it's something that you want. Like you don't go into DWM being like, oh, this is super easy to use. Like that's not who DWM is for.
Yeah.
Like it's for someone who wants to change a lot, and also like DWM is mainly for like if you want to learn, like you want to get into C, like. Yeah. Like
that's something I have in my notes regarding DWM is that I think I'm not a C programmer. I was going to say to you, like, I'm not a C programmer. Why would I use DWM? Because I really think DWM is amazing. Like, I wish I were a C programmer because then I'd probably use DWM. But I'm not a C programmer.
The thing is if you wanted to become a C programmer, there's no better way, like at least in my opinion, there's no more fun way. It's not going to be the most speediest way. It's not going to be the most in-depth. It's not going to be the most educational. But if you want the most fun way to dive into learning C, DWM is the best way, because you don't have to write everything from scratch. You don't have to do anything. You just, over time, patching it, you learn, because you can have one patch that tells you what it does, like not just its name, but it tells you like what it accomplishes. Then you have the diff, so you can read what it does to the code and how it affects the code and what the changes end up, like the end result is. And so over time, you learn what your patches do, how they change. And then once you start changing the code yourself, there is genuinely no more fun shit than changing some code and reloading and having the code that you wrote actually be something like not just work, but it affects everything that you do on your system. Like
that sounds pretty cool.
Change. Like that's a really fun way of learning C. But
like I've dabbled in C, but I'm just not really that interested in C. But if ever I do get that interested in C, which again, due to the way to what the stuff I program, it's probably not going to happen. But just in case, I will switch to DWM, probably. Just I've got to add that probably at the end.
Well, all right.
There's
Well,
hope. There's hope for people who want me to switch to DWM. Small hope, but hope nonetheless.
yeah, small hope.
And any questions I had about DWM, and I did have some, have already been covered.
Perfect.
You kind of accidentally covered them in ahead of time, so I didn't get a chance to ask them.
Awesome. Well,
Maybe you
I
have your
guess
own notes.
I won't. Not because I shouldn't, but I just won't.
Yeah.
I guess we're gonna go ahead and end it here, mainly because I want to get that fucking computer case put on here and like play around with it. And I don't know what's going on here recently. Like, not only has the channel started popping off, but I have suddenly decided to become like super productive. Like, I have meetings, like, or not really meetings, but these scheduled, like, just sitting down and talking with people. I have these scheduled like multiple
Podcasts
for different days, like to record. I have like work out the wazoo. I have like 5 different videos that I'm working on all at once. Like, this is probably the most productive I've ever been, and it needs to stop. Like,
it does.
Like, I'm used to being the slacker. Like, this is not me.
You need to look at some cat memes just to slow yourself down a bit.
Exactly.
Or Linux memes, rather.
Well,
seems more appropriate.
Cat memes sound better. Well, actually, I'm not a cat person, so that doesn't.
Why not have both?
There we go.
Cat Linux memes, if that's a thing.
Speaking of Linux memes, if anyone watching this wants to see some great, like, amazing memes, head over to the Linux Cast channel, and he has his Discord link in his descriptions. Follow his Discord. He has a Linux memes channel there, and bruh, when I tell you the shit that gets posted there is gold, I mean, it is gold. I mean, I have legitimately almost pissed myself reading some.
I can attest to that. I've seen it too. There's some pretty good stuff there.
Hilarious. But all right, boys, I think we're going to go ahead and end it off here. I hope everyone has a good time. And in the one that the Unix Crew that I recorded with DT, I forgot to do a send-off for my patrons, so I'll go ahead and make up for it here. TGB, Art Center, Seneca, Joshua Lee, Papa Smurf, Russell Willis, if I forgot to say you, I think I did. But Papa Smurf and Matt from the Linux Cast. Thank all you guys for your support over on Patreon. It means a lot. And TFL will definitely be back on the channel at some point again.
Yep.
Because there's just nothing better than having my dude on the channel. Because TFL, I'm telling you, your channel is great. It's educational as shit. And like, if you are watching my videos and going, man, I like the videos, but I wish there was some more informational content.
I wish I could learn something.
Exactly. Head over to TFL's channel because he will take care of you there. Like, if you
just don't expect to have fun. It's about learning, not necessarily having fun. Tyler's for fun.
Yeah, I mean, I'll stick by that. Your channel is definitely more educational and has like a purpose. Like, it teaches you stuff. Like,
yeah,
it's also in a fun way. Like, you don't like, you're not just hello people. Like, you don't do the monotone shit. Yeah. Like, where you're just like, hello guys, today we are going to have a thrilling experience. And like, no, that's not your channel. Like, that's the guy, like, the people who really get me is the ones who are like completely monotone, and they know what they're doing is not thrilling, but they're like, we're gonna have a very exciting day in Perl today. Like, it's just
like, code's already a dry topic, so I do try to have a bit of personality to it.
Exactly. Yeah, you bring your personality into it, which that is what makes it enjoyable, not just monotone telling me that this is fun. Like, come on, bro. Make it fun. Like, you do a good job of it.
Yeah.
Your shit is educational. Like, I like it. So definitely check out his stuff. His stuff will be down in the description below. And I hope everyone has a fantastic time. Goodbye.